Greetings, welcome to Tribal Jazzman Scholar. I want to talk a little bit more about teaching, and one of the qualities that I think teachers can develop and which really facilitate the relationship to kids and the process of learning. And learning here not being acquiring knowledge or assimilating information so much as gaining understanding, which can come through those other things. Knowledge and information can lead to understanding. But really, for me, the goal is that anything a child comes to know via information needs to somehow be integrated into who they are and what they seek. And it might not happen right away. But one of the things that I find really valuable and what I want to talk about is intuition. And I guess I'll give my definition of that. And intuition is really something that comes to us not through intention and cognition, but comes to us through openness and sometimes through quiet, but certainly through a non-linear, non-cerebral way of processing. It's not, intuition is really like an idea that pops into the mind. And I think we use intuition all the time, but we don't really often label it. We just sort of, I got this sudden idea, or I had this sudden impulse. But intuition really is at play in those moments. And in the teaching profession, one of the struggles for me as a teacher in public schools has been that the expectation of the system, and often the people who direct teachers, whether they're principals or administrators or other bureaucrats at the higher levels of the organization, there's an expectation among many of these people that I am going to guide students through a textbook, that I'm going to be sort of a docent to someone else's instructional format and sequencing, which is what a textbook is. It's somebody else's idea about how to communicate ideas. If a lesson plan is presented in a textbook, we'll do this and ask this and say this, then it's not mine. And what I find to be the limitation of that, there's a few. One of the most striking ones is that it doesn't allow for flexibility, but another one being that a child who is not able to follow that is expected somehow to go ahead and hang in there. So it doesn't really attend to all the children. This is where a more intuitive approach to teaching is very powerful, and it's powerful for a few reasons. And one of them is just is a little less tangible than the other. Intuition, for me, is understanding that if a group of students begins to question something I'm doing and in the process raise issues that I wasn't seeing, then I have a responsibility to try to address those issues. And very often there's a tremendous amount of learning that comes through the addressing of the unexpected issues that arise in the moment of teaching. It's important that they not completely pull you away from the original intent of a lesson. If it's to learn a particular thing or to understand a particular way of viewing a situation or a process, then we want to honor that and return to that. So it's important as a teacher to hold the big picture and be willing to allow for my intuition and their intuition to interrupt and maybe redirect, but to try to keep the big picture so that I can reframe and return. But intuition has another quality to it, and that is that intuition, if we entertain the possibility that it's not our intuition, that intuition is an opening to greater intelligence than just what might be contained in my own mind, if I subscribe to the idea, and I do, that there is an intelligence within which we all sort of swim, a greater intelligence. I don't mean in the sort of spiritual sense, this sort of divine intelligence, but maybe a little bit. I'm thinking of the earth and all of the biosystems and ecosystems and this incredibly intelligent way that life sustains itself produces something collectively that has a kind of intent, will, sentience. And so I tend to think of intuition, and I think of ideas and intuition very similarly because they come into the mind. I'm not even sure they're that different, although an idea seems to be a fully formed intuitive conception, whereas intuition can often be just kind of an impulse, a sense of a direction, kind of a whisper of a way to maybe move or speak. But it can be a full-blown idea coming into the mind almost without any intent on my part except that I'm receptive to it, like a knock at the door. And So what I wanted to say about its quality within the classroom is that if I'm open to that, I believe that it actually can tap into what's collectively impacting all of us. So I can have an intuition, maybe I should talk about it this way, and all of a sudden, eyes open, kids sit up, a couple hands might shoot up, and it becomes very relevant to many of them where they are in the moment. And I think that's because there is some way that this larger collective intelligence, this energy of life of the universe, is responding to where everyone is. So here I am, if I'm the teacher with the textbook, turn to page 36, and I'm the docent leading everyone through. It's almost as if we're all in alien territory, and none of us know why we're there. But we're just going to go ahead and do it because that's what schooling is, and that's not what I want to do as a teacher. I want to be present with every moment, especially because kids present all sorts of different challenges to the teacher, whether it's an emotional problem, a family problem, a tangible, I don't have my homework problem, it's an interpersonal, that student just said this thing to me problem. Those need to be addressed, and there is no textbook. So you have to be able to think creatively, and that's where the intuitive part falls in to that moment, or it certainly can inform that moment. So intuition is really, really, I think, where teaching needs to start. You need the training. It's like a musician. You need the training. You need to do the practices. You need to be well read. You need to have a lot of tools in your tool belt for when you may not feel inspired or intuitive. But then you need to be willing to breathe, calm, become aware, receptive, and then go with those impulses too, because then you're in a live, living process. If ideas are alive, if intuition comes like life into us, if we're part of a collective life that has an intent and goal for all of us to move humanity and consciousness to a more benevolent place, a more peaceful world, then we have to, as teachers, in this ancient sacred dance with our students, this mentor-mentee relationship, it's an ancient sacred way that we all become who we're supposed to become. We don't do it in a vacuum. We don't do it in isolation. And we don't do it entirely from our parents. They have a very different role. But the teaching role, the teacher is an important person in the dance of awakening. And they must be responsive to intuition, because that's where I'm aware where the student is. The student's in the great intelligence, and then if I'm the teacher and in that great intelligence, then I can read and suss and respond and interact in a way that's really about the moment. So that's my sense of intuition as a teacher. That's where I try to go. And like I said, as a musician as well, intuition has to be informed by practice and study. But it is that kind of spark of creative flair and spontaneous suitability to the moment that's hard to put my finger on, but it's very much there. Tribal Jazzman Scott, thanks for joining me.